Welcome back to Legal Matters, everyone. I'm your host, Alan Jones. With me now is Mark Brynteson, the managing attorney with the American law firm. This is a half-hour informational news call-in show devoted to a variety of legal topics. We have attorneys standing by now to take your call at the number on your screen. They'll be able to provide you with free information regarding your legal issue. So call now and throughout the next hour. Our opening statement right now, we're discussing auto claim accidents and how to protect yourself from insurance companies. Then in our second segment, we'll be continuing our discussion on protecting your rights and assets post-divorce. Let me remind you of the multiple practice areas in which the American law firm concentrates. The American law firm is a general practice law firm concentrating in divorce and family law cases, bankruptcy matters, personal injury claims, criminal traffic and DUI issues, wills, trust, and probate matters, real estate and business transactions, along with immigration and naturalization services. So feel free to call now to discuss any of these areas with attorneys who are standing by. So hello, Mark, and welcome to the show.
How you doing, Alan?
Good to see you. Well, let's pick up a little bit. We were talking about insurance and talking about auto accidents and dealing with insurance companies and all that. Take a minute and talk about the experience that American law firm has with these issues.
Well, we have attorneys that are very experienced in handling about any type of personal injury claim. It could be automobile collision, it could be slip and fall on premises, it could be products liability, medical malpractice. Wherever your need is, we can do it. And we're very thorough in investigating a claim because we want to make sure we have a claim that has merit, because the last thing you want to do is go through a claim, the claims process, litigation process, and find out there's not anything there because you didn't fulfill the legal elements of the claims. So it's very important to do a thorough investigation, and we have the experience to do that.
Okay, and of course, reminder, to call the number on your screen at 815-394-1776 and get your information there for your particular issue. So what happens if you're hit by an uninsured motorist? How difficult is that in terms of making a claim?
Well, there's hope. There's hope. State laws in basically all 50 states require you to have automobile insurance when you're out on the roads driving around. If you don't, it's a pretty hefty fine, could be jail time. So if you are hit by somebody that's not insured, generally you will have insurance. And in Illinois, in most states, your insurance policy, your individual insurance policy is required to have what's called uninsured motorist coverage. What that means is if somebody does hit you that's not insured, your insurance company will act like their insurance company, and that's where you can make the claim to settle. And there are a couple different ways. I practiced in Virginia for many years there. If you couldn't settle out of court, you would have to go to the, you'd have to file suit against the uninsured driver, and then your uninsured motorist coverage would kick in and defend him. Here in Illinois, it's a different process. It's an arbitration process that occurs outside of court unless some things happen and then you have to sue the uninsured motorist directly. But there is hope. You just have to look around and see where the coverage is at.
I would think in terms of an accident or filing a claim, you'd want to get it taken care of as soon as possible. But is there a statute of limitations for taking care of such issues? Generally
2 years. So I can give you an example from a past case I had. It's about wrapping up, but it was client came to me about 5 months before their statute of limitations runs. That means you have 2 years in Illinois to file a personal injury case in court. If you can't settle it, if you don't, you lose the right to go forward. In this particular case, she was representing herself on her own, and she hired me about 5 weeks before, or about 5 months before the statute ran. The other driver was uninsured, was actually convicted in traffic court of driving without insurance. What ended up happening, that we couldn't settle, we had to file suit. We gave notice of notice to the uninsured carrier, my client's insurance company, that we wanted an uninsured arbitration, which they acquiesced to. But there was just in my gut, there was a feeling that there's something not right here, so I actually sued the driver that was uninsured. Well, about 6 months later, the attorney representing the uninsured motorist carrier comes to me and says the actual defendant went into court and got the conviction for driving without insurance vacated. and she did have insurance. So if we wouldn't have sued her and let the statute run against her and they would have pulled that, the statute would have run. I think the companies were actually coordinating with each other. Yeah, and then finally an attorney was involved and we were able to catch it. So it's important to get, that's a good reason. You get to an attorney right away. Just imagine if my client didn't go to an attorney and just let it run, they would have been out of luck. But you could tell there wasn't something right. And I think the uninsured motorist carrier, which is my client's company, and the company for the actual defendant that did the caused the accident, I think they were working together to try to get the statute to run.
Is that common? For the two companies to work together?
You'd be surprised at what can happen. We can get in sometime about what happened to one of the large insurance companies in the country down in Florida with a lawsuit. I've talked a little bit before, but what you will see with the insurance companies is unbelievable.
Well, no, as you said before, the insurance company is not your friend.
No.
And so they're working to get things generally to their behalf. So naturally, you want to talk to an attorney about that. And you mentioned also previously some verbal traps that they will kind of throw at you. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh, yeah. What they'll do is adjusters are trained specifically to know how to handle somebody that's not represented by an attorney. They've actually been trained psychologically how to deal with them, to become their friend, become their best friend forever, take care of everything, and then when it comes time to settle up, the fangs come out. And they said, we're not going to give you anything. But and the person that was hurt is affronted because they were really thought they were trying to help them, and then all of a sudden they become the enemy. Well, you have to understand, they're out to make money for the insurance company, not make sure your bills are paid.
Okay. All right. Good information. We'll talk more about that later on. First, you're watching Legal Matters with the American Law Firm. We'll be right back after a break. And welcome back. I'm your host, Alan Jones, with me, Attorney Mark Brynteson with the American Law Firm. And you're watching Legal Matters, an informational and news call-in show devoted to a variety of legal topics. Attorneys are standing by right now to take your call at the number on your screen. That's 815-394-1776. They will provide you with free information regarding your legal issue, so call now. Lawyers will be standing by for about another half hour after the show ends. Okay, Mark, we're going to switch gears a little bit now and talk about something post-divorce. A lot of things happen leading up to a divorce and in the middle of it, but there are things that need to be taken care of after everything is taken care of. So let's talk about the first thing, a modification. What needs to happen there?
Well, a modification of, well, let's go through the process. You file a petition for divorce. There's some hearings for to determine temporary issues, temporary support issues, spousal support, child support, who's living where. Because remember, you're dissolving basically something that took a long time to put together, especially if there's kids. So there has to be some type of orderly who's going to live where, how are the kids going to be shuffled back and forth, because they will, and you want to try to do it in the least restricted means as possible, especially to the children. The courts really want to make sure that the children are affected as least as possible.
Sure.
Then you end up with a joint parenting agreement if there are children, property settlement agreement, and then there's a final divorce decree. Now, you're divorced. Everything is done. But let's say you have children that are 5 years old, 6 years old when you're divorced. I think what people don't really realize is even though they get divorced, they're going to see each other frequently if they both care about the child or their children, because they're going to be attending events, graduations, weddings, 8th grade graduations, band events, athletic events, and things happen. One great example is what's happened in the economy over the last 7 years. There's been a lot of people that have lost jobs, especially after the divorce. Well, a lot of the child support, spousal support, is geared to when somebody was working and making a certain amount of money. Well, let's say they lose a job. Now they're not making that same amount of money. There needs to be an adjustment to that final divorce decree, or it needs to be modified because you just can't keep up with it. example, if you're supposed to pay, say, $500 a month and you lose your job and you don't go back into court and get the decree modified, that keeps running. You're not going to be able to go out back and undo. You need to go back and get that taken care of right away. We've had people come in that never went back and it keeps running for 2 or 3 years when they should have it modified. That's a lot of money that has accrued that they probably shouldn't have had to pay. Doesn't mean they don't want to pay, but they also have to pay their own electric bill,
everything else,
gas bill,
yeah,
food bill, gas bill,
yeah,
and they may get married and they have another family they need to take care of. So post-divorce work is very, very crucial.
And then it's not just a matter of saying, well, I lost my job, sorry, I can't pay you that right now. The $500 still continues to roll.
Yeah, unless
without the judicial
right,
change.
you need to go in and have a judge actually enter an order modifying that final divorce decree. Without that, it stays intact all the time.
Okay. What about moving to a different state? I know when it comes to custody issues, I mean, that can be awfully tough too. So how do you go about getting that taken care of?
Well, the context for that is really an interesting question. We see a lot of issues, heartache, arise out of that very issue. For instance, let's say you have a couple that had a child but they weren't married, or they were married and they're divorced. Either way, sometimes, especially with the couples that weren't married and they'd never been to court before, if you're not married, you had a child, you've never been to court before, and one of the parents is considered the primary residence for the child, that parent can get up and leave and maybe go from Illinois down to Florida. Seen this a lot. Not necessarily Florida, could be California, wherever. Well, if they stay in the other state long enough and that state gets jurisdiction over the child, then that state could be the jurisdiction where all things are determined for that child. So it's important to get into court, even if it's a non-marital birth, if it's a boyfriend-girlfriend situation, and get things determined, because if you're the parent that doesn't have the child and the child's taken to another state, and then you got to pay an attorney in another state to take care of support, visitation, sure, it can be a world of hurt. You never get to see your child, you never get to visit with your child, especially if the other spouse is trying to keep you from seeing your child.
That, yeah. And that's always very difficult. That's an extremely emotional situation, obviously,
yes,
for a lot of reasons. So that's why it's always best, I would assume, to go with an attorney to go through the whole thing and just smooth everything out.
Well, I can't,
as much as possible.
I can't tell you how important that is. Main reason, like we talked about personal injury at the beginning and now divorce, is a little bit up front can save you a lot on the end.
Yeah.
So don't skimp on the front. Come and see us then, because that's when we can save you a lot in the end.
A lot of time. Thank you, Mark, for your time and insight on this topic. Again, lawyers from the American Law Firm are standing by right now to take your call, no matter what the topic, and the advice is free. The number is 815-394-1776. Lawyers will be taking calls for a half hour after the airing of the show, and we'll be back with a closing statement when Legal Matters returns.